The war on drugs was a campaign by former President Richard Nixon to ban the sale of drugs and intervene in countries that sold them. The policy was an absolute disaster for America. In this video, I'll go over the bad intentions of the war on drugs, its effects, and what we should do moving forward on drugs. The war on drugs was directly and intentionally racist, which Nixon's domestic policy advisor admits in this quote. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. We can also see this in practice. According to Justice Policy Institute, white and black people smoke weed the same rate, but black people are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for a weed offense. People nowadays will defend the war on drugs, saying that making drugs illegal will lower the amount of drug use and drug crime in America. Empirically, this is false. According to Skyward Recovery, 95% of incarcerated addicts will return to drug use after being released from prison. 60 to 80% of them will commit new crimes. In addition, according to Pew Charitable Trusts, locking up drug offenders does not reduce drug use. The war on drugs is also a drag financially, costing around $100 billion annually according to Open Society Foundations. Of this $100 billion, $400 billion of that is spent in the US alone, according to The Hill. Despite this, drug use has risen 31% from 2011 to 2016, showing a complete and utter failure of the drug war to even come close to lowering the amount of drug use. One of the worst parts about the drug war would probably be the immense amount of profit that's earned by the drug cartels, due to the fact that since drugs are illegal, people who want drugs bad enough will buy from a black market, and that black market makes millions if not billions, causing more violence and suffering than if you hypothetically allowed US companies to sell those drugs, where instead of there being a gunfight between cartels if there's a dispute, disputes will be managed in the court. According to Rand, the war on drugs raised the profits of cocaine cartels and manufacturers. In addition, according to the International Journal of Drug Policy, drug prohibition likely contributes to drug market policy and increased homicide rates, and that increasingly sophisticated methods of distributing illicit drugs distribution networks may in turn increase levels of violence. Both studies confirm my previous statement on cartels. Also, according to the Hill article I cited previously, opium production in illegal drug markets have risen 130%, and cocaine also rising 34% between 2009 and 2018. In Portugal, they decriminalized all drugs and saw massive benefits, and provided a great case study for the idea of ending the war on drugs. According to Statista, drug decriminalization in Portugal led to a reduction in overdoses, HIV, and drug incarcerations. In addition, legal weed led to reduced violent crime, reduced homicide, and reduced opiate death and abuse, according to the Economic Journal, JAMA, and the American Journal of Public Health. This study by the Journal of Adolescent Health also says the following quote, "There were no statistically significant differences in marijuana use before and after policy change for any state pairing. In the regression analysis, we did not find an overall increased probability of marijuana use related to the policy change." There are probably people who it just doesn't make sense in their heads that decriminalization of drugs could lead to less drug use, and that this is the best possible policy for having less drugs. This is completely understandable, but in this section we will go over how this actually does make sense theoretically, and what policies go along with drug decriminalization that are reducing drugs and reducing other harmful things. A core tenet of drug decriminalization is that people arrested for drug-related crimes should be sent to rehabilitation instead of a jail cell, as rehabilitation is a lot more effective at stopping them from reoffending. According to Chandler et al. 14, a meta-analysis of 78 comparison group community-based drug treatment studies says that treatment is up to 1.8 times or 180% better in reducing drug use than the usual alternatives. Quote, "Research has consistently shown that community-based drug abuse treatment can reduce drug use and drug-related criminal behavior." In addition, De Andrade et al. 18 also says the following quote, "Therapeutic communities are effective in reducing recidivism and, to a lesser extent, substance use after release." End quote. "Opioid maintenance treatment is effective in reducing the risk of drug use after release from prison for opioid users." Another study done by the Justice Policy Institute shows that offenders who went through his treatment showed a nearly 2/3 decline in overall arrests and an over 50% drop in drug possession arrests, indicating that actually treating these people instead of throwing them into a concrete box is a much more effective tactic. Another policies that have been shown to be beneficial have been safe consumption rooms. Safe consumption rooms are defined as professionally supervised healthcare facilities where drug users can use drugs in safer, more hygienic conditions. While to some people this may sound like a strange concept, they have been highly effective in saving lives and also saving tens of millions of dollars in the process. According to Potier et al. 14, a meta-analysis of 75 studies on supervised injection services found that, quote, all studies converged to find that SISs were efficacious in attracting the most marginalized people who inject drugs, promoting safer injection conditions, enhancing access to primary health care, and reducing the overdose frequency. SISs were not found to increase drug injecting, drug trafficking, or crime in the surrounding environments. SISs were found to be associated with reduced levels of public drug injections and drop syringes. There's also Marshall et al. 11, which looked at the overdose mortality rate before and after the opening of a safe consumption room in Vancouver, the first in North America. They found that the fatal overdose rate in this area, 500 meters radius of the center, decreased by 35.0% after the opening of SIF, from 253.8 to 165.1 deaths per 100,000 person years. By contrast, during the same period, the fatal overdose rate in the rest of the city decreased by only 9.3% from 7.6 to 6.9 deaths per 100,000 person years. Another study from Vancouver's NG et al. 17, which says best evidence from cohort and modeling studies suggests that SISs are associated with lower overdose mortality, 88 fewer overdose deaths per 100,000 person years, 67% fewer ambulance calls for treating overdoses, and a decrease in HIV infections. As well as severely decreasing the amount of overdosing and saving lives, these safe consumption rooms are also very cost effective. According to Bayomi and Zarago-Waite, quote, focusing on the base assumption of decreased needle sharing as the only effect of the supervised injection facility, we found that the facility was associated with an incremental net savings of almost $14 million and 920 life years gained over 10 years. We also considered the health effect of increased use of safe injection practices. The incremental net savings increased to more than $20 million and the number of life years gained to 1,070. Further increases were estimated when we considered all three health benefits. The incremental net savings was more than $18 million, and the number of life years gained was 1,175. In this video, we went over the ineffectiveness of the war on drugs, its bad intentions, the profit that cartels make from it, the positive effects of drug decriminalization, and finally the ways in which decriminalization of drugs is beneficial, which are drug treatment and safety consumption rooms instead of just being locked up in a jail cell. I hope you all learned something from the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for my next video.